Hello, hello, and welcome to another forecast. This is for our first of two eclipses, the Pisces full moon eclipse, which is happening on the 17th or 18th of September, depending where you live. For me in South Africa, it's the 18th, hence the date on the chart. And also remember that I've drawn this up for South Africa, where I'm living. So it may not be that you have Leo on the ascendant. You're going to look at where these planets that we talk about fall in your chart. That's the best way to personalize it a bit more. And other than that, you can draw up your own chart. This is AstroSeek that I use, but astro.com is also a good one that I use regularly. They're both free platforms, so you can draw up the chart for your area if you would like to. But more importantly is to have your own chart drawn up on one of these platforms and then see if you have any planets or points near any of the planets or points at this lunation, because eclipses are, and this is a supermoon, I believe, which is just where the moon is closer to the Earth. But eclipses are kind of like an intensified new or full moon. And what you're going to find is that the impact starts a little longer than usual before that lunation and proceeds to impact us quite a lot further down the line than your average, in this case, full moon. The portal opened from the Virgo new moon, and this is the first eclipse, and then we have a second eclipse at the Libra new moon, and then it will close at the following full moon, the Aries full moon. So we're having this eclipse at 25 degrees. The sun will be 25 degrees Virgo, the moon will be 25 degrees Pisces, because as always, sun and moon are opposite each other at a full moon. That's what a full moon is. And full moon is always going to be that time where the moon is reflecting the fullness of the sun's light. And because she is very emotionally based and reflective, she is now able to emotionally pull what she is reflecting in the sun. So opposing signs are always going to bring out these this sort of tug of war energy, this intense sort of polarizing dynamic that you can't do without, like two sides of a coin. Your back can't see your front, but at the same time, they're both necessary. So here we're dealing with two very health-focused signs. Virgo, which is where the sun's been traveling already for a while. By the time we have this full moon, it's nearly the end of the sun's journey through Virgo. And we find Virgo time is oftentimes when we want to get very organized and detail-oriented. We want to be quite discerning, and we edit certain things out of our lives and we add new healthy routines and rituals. So you may already feel like you've been in that sort of a space by the time this full moon hits. And because the full moon is in Pisces, which is where Virgo is much more analytical and physical health focused, Pisces is much more emotional, psychological health focused. And so now we might see the polarization of where we've put focus into one of those two parts a lot more, or where we haven't been putting enough focus into any of those places in our lives, and that's going to impact how we deal with things. So in this particular platform, the AstroSeek, the darker lines, if you see a more thicker lines, represent a closer connection point. So it's a thick line between the sun and the moon because they're exactly opposite each other at a full moon. But you can see there's also a really thick line here between, hang on a second, here we go, sorry, between Mercury in Virgo and Saturn. And Mercury is how we think about things. He rules Virgo, so he's very comfortable in Virgo, remembering he's just done this whole retrograde process, which was moving from Virgo into Leo and now back into Virgo. So now he's getting this speed and this traction, and he's finally able to be really discerning in all those Virgo things I just said. And he's in his happy place, but exactly opposing him is Saturn, less happy in the sign of Pisces, and Saturn is about rules and structures. So there is this, although it's quite hard to make structures in the ocean. Pisces is the ocean and Saturn's there trying to kind of corral or make coral castles within the ocean. So this is maybe where you're going to also have to look at, where am I so like focused on my details that I'm not able to kind of open up and trust the big picture? And where do I need to try and get a little bit more structured and detailed because I'm all kind of oceanic and all over the place? This gives us that opportunity to explore those internal spaces within us. But again, an opposition is usually not super comfortable because Mercury's pulling on the one side of the rope and Saturn's pulling on the other side of the rope. And it's a question of who wins. Normally, the slower planet tends to win. But in this case, Mercury is very strong in his home sign. So it's going to be an interesting feeling. Then also, Mercury is really fast. Aside from the moon, he's the fastest moving planet. And of course, the moon's not really a planet, but for purposes of this, Mercury is really, really fast, and Saturn is really slow. So there's also this dynamic of push and pull, hurry up and wait. Where am I too quick in my life that I need to slow down and go with the flow and recognize that things actually require a process and certain amount of time sometimes to settle in? Like at the last new moon in Virgo, I'm not sure if I mentioned it here, but I was mentioning it in many different platforms that, you're planting these seeds, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see the results of that by this full moon or by the next day, or it's going to take time. An acorn doesn't become a big old oak tree overnight, and that is part of Saturn's lesson. So you might want to look at the places where you're trying to do too much too fast or get results too quickly and neglecting the fact that things take time and due process, so to speak. But then also the other side of that, where am I so slow and steady wins the race that I'm not actually allowing myself to get to the end of that task or get to the end of that project or complete something? Where am I not allowing myself little bursts of speed when that is available to me? Depending on your personality type, I err on the side of being a faster person. So I definitely know that for me, this is also where it's important to look at your chart and look at you. I'm going to have to look at where I need to slow down and be patient, most likely. Of course, these are guidelines. We never really know what gets thrown at us when we get there, and we just need to, the more we know ourselves, the better we can interface with whatever shows up at the time. But these two oppositions, the sun and moon, which is obviously the full moon, which we're talking about, but it's an eclipse, and Mercury and Saturn are both in the archetype of Pisces and Virgo. So we are very, very much having to feel into those things. Also, for anybody who has a mutable Saturn, which means you have your Saturn in your birth chart in Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces, I'll just show you the signs. Gemini looks like a Roman numeral 2. Virgo looks like an M with crossed legs. Sagittarius looks like an arrow, and Pisces looks like two fish bound to each other. If you have Saturn in mutable signs, you're also in a powerful Saturn place in your life right now. So if you have Saturn in Pisces, you're in a Saturn return. Or if you're in Virgo, it's a Saturn opposition, or otherwise you're in one of your Saturn squares. So that's going to add to it if you're in one of those particularly strong Saturn phases right now, and we have this really internal dynamic going on between Virgo and Pisces, that's going to be even stronger for you. So you can see how you can get more and more discerning using a little forecast like this and taking it into your own chart, particularly if you are slowly, cumulatively learning what your chart looks like, what the glyphs are, how you are internally, how you are wired, basically, in all the different ways. Then each time you listen to these things and take them into your chart, it'll get easier and easier. And it's really wonderful when you start to see those seeds blossoming and blooming. Okay, then one of the things I also want to talk about, which is really wonderful here, is we have this lovely grand trine. Okay, now grand trines are kind of like really gifts of flow, and this is where we're on track and kind of ease and grace. Now, the one point of this grand trine is our sun in Virgo, and then we have Uranus in Taurus and Pluto in just at the end here of Capricorn, which he's literally going to move out of in November for the very, very, very last time in our lifetimes. So first of all, Pluto is a bit of a tough chap. He's about power struggles, redressing the power balances, transformation, and of course, at the very 29th, the very last degree of a sign that he's been in since 2008. And this is his last touchback to just make sure, did I do all the breaking down of the toxicity in the archetype of Capricorn? Or is there one more thing I might need to do? That's kind of where Pluto's at this point. And then we've got Uranus, who's getting to that same point within the Taurus archetype. He takes about 7 years in a sign, and he's getting to the end of that journey. He's going to start tipping into Gemini next year. So he is retrograde at this point, as is Pluto. And Uranus in Taurus, he's a bit frustrated there, but we're kind of used to that now because he's been there for, as I say, a good few years now. But with that frustration, Uranus is quite like sudden changes and paradigm shifts and lightning bolts. And of course, Taurus is slow and steady wins the race, don't rush me kind of energy. So it's a little bit more challenging there, but he is also eking out the last of these slow, plodding lessons that he's had to work through. And then, of course, the sun, which really initiates this great light and thought. So you might want to look at the houses that this is falling in your chart, because that will give you a stronger indication of where this sudden ease of transition may appear for you, because these are changeable energies. But the change, we've had a lot of challenging change. Well, we're still having a lot of challenging change. So when we get this opportunity for like, oh, wow, I needed to do that, and it's now done, and it wasn't as bad as I expected. That's what we're being offered here. And I love it that it's Pluto's last touchback, because it's kind of just saying you've done so much. And this is going to be particularly true if you have done so much. It might be an opportunity for you to really be recognized either by yourself or by others for having done so much work on yourself, on your frequency, to get to the point that you're at now with Pluto's last touchback, that it's like, oh, wow, look at this. I am actually seeing some fruits of my labor. And this is even further enhanced. You can see the grand trine looks like a big blue triangle, Earth trine. And remember, Earth energy, sorry, let me just jump back there. Earth energy is practical and material and monetary and tangible, these kinds of things. So this gift that we're getting to see is, I can see the fruits of my labor in my hands, in front of my eyes. It's going to have it's going to have rigor and grit to it, something that you can grab hold of, which is really nice, because I think there hasn't been a lot of that going around. Okay, but what I also wanted to point out here is that it's actually also forming what's called a kite. So when one side of that grand trine is making a sextile and another sextile, and here these sextiles are coming to Neptune. And Neptune is in the end final degrees of his very long journey through Pisces, which he's also been in for many moons now. And he will begin his exit from Pisces into Aries. The 0 Aries point is the very first point of the zodiac, which is a complete new beginning. And this is a 150 odd year cycle. So that's no small thing for Neptune to be kind of coming to the culmination point of a 150 year cycle and about to embark on the next 150 year cycle. And so that means that all of the outer planets are engaged in this grand trine and this kite. So that means that Pluto, who's already began to dip back and forth into his next long journey because his cycle is 250 odd years, he's already been touching into Aquarius. We've been getting like quite a lot of what that will look like, go back to Capricorn, back to Aquarius. And as I say, he moves out in November out of Capricorn for the very, very last time. And just as he's starting to get this traction in his new archetype, we're going to see next year and the year after these other two planets doing the same back and forth through their old sign. In Neptune's case, Pisces into Aries, back to Pisces, back to Aries. And in Uranus's case, Taurus into Gemini, into Taurus into Gemini. So this is really, really remarkable. It's not something that happens very often. First, it's not that an outer planet moves very often. one outer planet. It's very unlikely, and I did hear the dates on this through another astrologer's forecast, and I think it was something down to the 1500s, but it was pre us actually having discovered these outer planets, when that was the last time that the outer planets all moved within the space of a few years, sort of simultaneously. So this is very profound, and at this particular eclipse, full moon eclipse, we are really getting the blessing of this. And really, societally, we're all feeling the challenge. I just want to tell you, I looked at the time, and where I am, it's 11:44 in the morning, so double magic there. Sorry, back to the forecast. Societally, we are seeing so much breaking down that it has this very unsafe feeling for us, because the things that we know are all breaking down, and now what do? We don't know how to move from here. So that's been a lot of the feeling that a lot of people will be having: overwhelm, chaos, uncertainty, insecure, unsafe, those kinds of feelings. And a lot of that is to do with what's happening with the outer planets. And eclipses kind of give us these big moments too. But in this particular eclipse, these outer planets are kind of giving us a little insight, a little blessing and whisper into, this is happening for you, not to you. And I feel like that's really, really beautiful, and that we need to hold on to that with our whole hearts. And then another lovely trine that we have in this particular forecast is Venus at 23 degrees, almost 24 degrees of Libra, and Jupiter at 20 degrees of Gemini. They're forming a trine with each other, and they're known as the two benefic planets that are giving and joyful and generous and attracting and loving and all of those things. They're forming a trine, that beautiful, graceful angle, saying, let's bring a little love. So we have the intensity of an eclipse, which is always quite a lot. And oftentimes you'll have a bam. It's not a total eclipse, so it's usually a little less intense, but you'll have a bam moment of that eclipse. But also you'll oftentimes not see it at the eclipse. You'll see it playing out down the line, and you'll realize, oh, it actually started at that point, but I couldn't see it yet. Now I can. So that is also a huge potential for this. But just to notice that there are really, okay, there's those two strong oppositions, those push-pull, hurry up and wait feelings, and very much a lot in how we are able to look after our own needs so that we can look after the needs of others. And then these beautiful grand trine kites with all the outer planets and the sun really shining his light on this. And then that lovely trine between Jupiter and Venus. And then we have Mars in Cancer, and Mars is going to be moving slower and slower as he begins his journey into Leo and then retrogrades back into Cancer. So Mars here, he kind of wants to be nurturing, and that's not always easy for Mars. So there is also this kind of like, oh, it's really hard for me to slow down and nourish, but that is what is needed right now. And he's working on that. He's working on that. He is forming a square to the nodes at this particular point, because the nodes are at 7 degrees of Libra and Aries, and he is at 7 degrees of Cancer. And that's gonna be a little uncomfortable. A planet squaring the nodes is challenging. So again, it's saying, for me to develop into the new way of being, I need to be able to figure out how to nurture myself and how to nurture others with all these fears and insecurities and change that's happening. I need to find that self-love, that self-care, lead by example. And that way I can nourish myself to nourish the world, which for me is a humongous theme that's ongoing for all of us. So I hope this has been helpful. I'm going to leave it at that. I hope that you have a beautiful eclipse. I will be back for another eclipse reading for the next new moon, and that will see us out of the eclipse season. I really do believe that there's some really good potential for us here to go through something big, but in a way where we get enough messaging and symbolism and support from who knows where. It will be different for each of us, to help us to see that it's happening for me, not to me. Okay, remember that. This is happening for me and not to me. Have a beautiful eclipse, and I will be back for the next forecast. Thank you for watching, and I really appreciate likes, shares, comments, subscribes, and the works.